"And me," he murmured. "Now, gentlemen, will you kindly state your business? My own affairs press me." Pickering was studying the cartridge boxes on the library table. The sheriff, too, was viewing the effects with interest, not, I think, unmixed with awe. "Glenarm, I don't like to invoke the law to eject you from this property, but I am left with no alternative. I can't stay out here indefinitely, and I want to know what I'm to expect." "That's a fair question," I replied. "If it were merely a matter of following the terms of the will, I should not hesitate or be here now. But it isn't the will or my grandfather that keeps me. It's the determination to give you all the annoyance possible, to make it hard, and mighty hard, for you to get hold of this house until I have found out why you are so much interested in it." "You always had a grand way in money matters. As I told you before you came out here, it's a poor stake. The assets consist wholly of this land and this house, whose quality you have had an excellent opportunity to test. You have doubtless heard that the country people believe there is money concealed here, but I dare say you have exhausted the possibilities. This is not the first time a rich man has died, leaving precious little behind him." "You seem very anxious to get possession of a property that you call a poor stake," I said. "A few acres of land, a half-finished house, and an uncertain claim upon a schoolteacher." "I had no idea you would understand it," he replied. "The fact that a man may be under oath to perform the solemn duties imposed upon him by the law would hardly appeal to you. But I haven't come here to debate this question. When are you going to leave?" "Not till I'm ready, thanks." "Mr. Sheriff, will you serve your writ?" he said, and I looked to Stoddard for any hint from him as to what I should do. "I believe Mr. Glenarm is quite willing to hear whatever the sheriff has to say to him," said Stoddard. He stepped nearer to me, as though to emphasize the fact that he belonged to my side of the controversy, and the sheriff read an order of the Wabana County Circuit Court directing me immediately to deliver the house and grounds into the keeping of the executor of the will of the estate of John Marshall Glenarm. The sheriff rather enjoyed holding the center of the stage, and I listened quietly to the unfamiliar phraseology. Before he had quite finished, I heard a step in the hall, and Larry appeared at the door, pipe in mouth. Pickering turned toward him, frowning, but Larry paid not the slightest attention to the executor, leaning against the door with his usual tranquil unconcern. "I advise you not to trifle with the law, Glenarm," said Pickering angrily. "You have absolutely no right whatever to be here, and these other gentlemen, your guests, I suppose, are equally trespassers under the law." He stared at Larry, who crossed his legs for greater ease in adjusting his lean frame to the door. "Well, Mr. Pickering, what is the next step?" asked the sheriff, with an importance that had been increased by the legal phrases he had been reading. "Mr. Pickering," said Larry, straightening up and taking the pipe from his mouth, "I am Mr. Glenarm's counsel. If you will do me the kindness to ask the sheriff to retire for a moment, I should like to say a few words to you that you might prefer to keep between ourselves." I had usually found it wise to take any cue Larry threw me, and I said, "Pickering, this is Mr. Donovan, who has every authority to act for me in the matter." Pickering looked impatiently from one to the other of us. "You seem to have the guns, the ammunition, and the numbers on your side," he observed dryly. "The sheriff may wait within call," said Larry, and at a word from Pickering the man left the room. "Now, Mr. Pickering," Larry spoke slowly, "as my friend has explained the case to me, the assets of his grandfather's estate are all accounted for. The land hereabouts, this house, the $10,000 in securities, and a somewhat vague claim against a lady known as Sister Theresa, who conducts St. Agatha's School. Is that correct?" "I don't ask you to take my word for it, sir," rejoined Pickering hotly. "I have filed an inventory of the estate, so far as found, with the proper authorities." "Certainly. But I merely wish to be sure of my facts for the purpose of this interview, to save me the trouble of going to the records. And moreover, I am somewhat unfamiliar with your procedure in this country. I am a member, sir, of the Irish bar. Pardon me, but I repeat my question." "I have made oath, that is, I trust, sufficient enough for a member of the Irish bar." "Quite so, Mr. Pickering," said Larry, nodding his head gravely. He was not, to be sure, a presentable member of any bar, for a smudge detracted considerably from the appearance of one side of his face, his clothes were rumpled and covered with black dust, and his hands were black. But I had rarely seen him so calm. He recrossed his legs, peered into the bowl of his pipe for a moment, then asked, as quietly as though he were soliciting an opinion of the weather, "Will you tell me, Mr. Pickering, whether you yourself are a debtor of John Marshall Glenarm's estate?" Pickering's face grew white, and his eyes stared, and when he tried suddenly to speak his jaw twitched. The room was so still that the breaking of a blazing log on the andirons was a pleasant relief. We stood, the three of us, with our eyes on Pickering, and in my own case I must say that my heart was pounding my ribs at an uncomfortable speed, for I knew Larry was not sparring for time. The blood rushed into Pickering's face, and he turned toward Larry stormily. "This is unwarrantable and infamous. My relations with Mr. Glenarm are none of your business. When you remember that after being deserted by his own flesh and blood, he appealed to me, going so far as to entrust all of his affairs to my care at his death, your reflection is an outrageous insult. I am not accountable to you or anyone else." "Really, there's a good deal in all that," said Larry. "We don't pretend to any judicial functions. We are perfectly willing to submit the whole business and all of my clients' acts to the authorities." I would give much if I could reproduce some hint of the beauty of that word authorities as it rolled from Larry's tongue. "Then in God's name do it, you blackguards!" roared Pickering. Stoddard, sitting on a table, knocked his heels together gently. Larry recrossed his legs and blew a cloud of smoke. Then, after a quarter of a minute in which he gazed at the ceiling with his quiet blue eyes, he said, "Yes, certainly there are always the authorities. And as I have a tremendous respect for your American institutions, I shall at once act on your suggestion. Mr. Pickering, the estate is richer than you thought it was. It holds, or will hold, your notes given to the decedent for $320,000. He drew from his pocket a brown envelope, walked to where I stood, and placed it in my hands. At the same time, Stoddard's big figure grew active, and before I realized that Pickering had leaped toward the packet, the executor was sitting in a chair where the chaplain had thrown him. He rallied promptly, stuffing his necktie into his waistcoat. He even laughed a little. "So much old paper. You gentlemen are perfectly welcome to it." "Thank you," jerked Larry. "Mr. Glenarm and I had many transactions together, and he must have forgotten to destroy those papers." "Quite likely," I remarked. "It is interesting to know that Sister Theresa wasn't his only debtor." Pickering stepped to the door and called the sheriff. "I shall give you until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to vacate the premises. The court understands the situation perfectly. These claims are utterly worthless, as I am ready to prove." "Perfectly, perfectly," repeated the sheriff. "I believe that is all," said Larry, pointing to the door with his pipe. The sheriff was regarding him with particular attention. "What did I understand your name to be?" he demanded. "Laurance Donovan," Larry replied coolly. Pickering seemed to notice the name now, and his eyes lighted disagreeably. "I have heard of your friend before," he said, turning to me. "I congratulate you on the international reputation of your counsel. He's esteemed so highly in Ireland that they offer a large reward for his return. Sheriff, I think we have finished our business for today." He seemed anxious to get the man away, and we gave them escort to the outer gate where a horse and buggy were waiting. "Now I'm in for it," said Larry as I locked the gate. "We've spiked one of his guns, but I've given him a new one to use against myself. But come, I'll show you the door of bewilderment before I skip." End of chapter 23.